Good afternoon, Tuscaloosa, world, West Alabama, right here in downtown Northport. You're tuned in to the Joe Gaither Show right here on BamaCentral and BamaCentral.com. You guys are watching us each and every day on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter. You're listening to us on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, and on Amazon. Subscribe, rate, review the program. Make sure that you subscribe to our other Bama Central Broadcasting Network podcast. Our friends Blue Collar Unplugged released their latest episode this past week, getting ready for basketball season. I believe we're, 11 days away. Oh, my goodness, 11 days away from Alabama basketball tipping off. So you want to make sure you're listening to Blue Collar Unplugged with Jacob Pickle, Matthew Gibson, and Blake Byler each and every episode, keeping up with Crimson Tide. But we're not going to talk about basketball today. It's Football Friday. It's Football Friday right here on the Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral.com. So we're going to talk about some football all show long. Obviously, the Alabama Crimson Tide are not in action tomorrow. Oh my gosh, what are you going to do with your life? Hopefully, you're going to have some fun with your life. Enjoy your lives. Talking about, we're going to go to a baseball game tomorrow. Watch Alabama baseball play Florida State in a little exhibition. But we're also going to be paying attention to all the football action that is around the SEC, around the national picture. And then Sunday, of course, Sunday is going to be NFL action. A lot of Bama on Bama crime is sure to happen on Sunday. But before we get into it, we want to encourage you to follow us on the social media machines at Joe Gaither 6 for all your social media machines, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat, TikTok, wherever you want to find us, whatever your favorite social media machine is, you can find us at Joe Gaither 6. Send us your comments, your questions, your queries, and complaints right there to any of the social medias. We'll connect with you guys and take all of your comments right there. You can jump in on the show on Facebook and on Twitter through Joe Gaither 6 if you want to. We're welcoming in several Bama Central staff members, and we're going to find Chris Walsh here soon. But today's guests include Mr. Wyatt Fulton, back for another week after a strong showing last week, and Mr. Will Miller. We haven't seen Will Miller in quite some time, but it's fall break, and so the student jumps on and schools the teacher right here on the Joe Gaither Show on Football Friday. Before we get into it, guys, before we talk football, let's check in and find out how you're doing. How's life going? Wyatt Fulton, did you enjoy the week? Just how many cigars did you smoke?
I can confirm I only smoked the one. I turned to a buddy of mine I ended up going to the game. I turned to a buddy of mine in the stadium and said at halftime and said, "This is not going to be pretty." So we need one of the best halftime speeches I've ever seen. And we got it. So I was very happy by the fourth quarter.
Excellent. You weren't one of those that were in my mentions or up on the timeline giving up on the Tide at halftime, were you?
I don't believe so. I tend to tweet a little recklessly in the middle of a game, but when I go back and rewatch it, it's like, okay, I kind of overreacted there, but I should be fine.
Well, Will Miller, how about yourself? How's the semester going, and how's life going? Miss Julian Lee, before you time in, Miss Julian Lee jumping in saying hello to everyone. So hello, Miss Julian. We'll talk about Tommy Rees today. That's one of my topics today. So how you doing, and thanks for watching. Will Miller, how's the semester going? You staying alive?
Yeah, staying alive is a good way to put it. Pretty busy with schoolwork and such, but everything is going along. It's gone by pretty fast, and I'm kind of with Wyatt's assessment on the not pretty, but I think that the second half wasn't pretty for Tennessee, and I think that's the main not pretty takeaway. So one of the biggest turnarounds in a football game that I can recall off the top of my head right now, and I was surprised with how it played out. I thought that the team showed the kind of fire that maybe some in the fan base thought they'd been missing. But overall, I'm doing pretty well. Seems like the football team's doing pretty well. So we'll see what happens from here on out.
Absolutely. Well, it is Football Friday, Will Miller. So tell us how the women's football team did last night. I know you wrote the wrap-up piece for Alabama soccer last night. Give me a brief recap of the 2-1 win.
Well, last night's match was pretty big because Alabama had to win in order to remain in contention for a first-round bye at the SEC tournament in Pensacola, which starts next week. And Alabama got that by coming back with 2 goals in the second half to beat Missouri. So another game that didn't start out so pretty in the first half, but ended on a high note for the Crimson Tide. And it'll be a rematch with Mississippi State on Tuesday in a match that was just played this past Sunday that Mississippi State got the better of. So, again, we'll see what happens from here on out.
And let's check in with our friend, our boss, Chris Walsh. You can find him on the Twitter machine at Writing Walsh. Chris, how's your week been going? Everything rocking and rolling at the Walsh household?
Yeah, we're fine. Thanks. Appreciate you asking. How's everyone with you guys?
We're having a great day so far. We're just getting rolling. Wyatt told us how his Saturday experience was in Bryant-Denny Stadium, and Will just wrapped up his little soccer recap from last night, keeping it on the football theme. So there's no game this week for Alabama. But we are going to have a lot of fun on Friday. I've got several topics to get into. I want to talk about Michigan a good bit. I want to talk about the 5-game slate on the SEC schedule. I want to talk about the Huffman Vikings just for a quick moment. Alabama's punt returner situation, Tommy Rees, Will Reichert, and if we have some time, we'll talk some NFL Bama on Bama crime as well. So what do we want to start with, guys? Let's start with Alabama. Let's start with Alabama. Nick Saban, the only real news that we really had this week, obviously bye-week news, with Alabama practiced on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, taking Monday and today off. Nick Saban is already at the lake getting ready for his birthday dinner on Saturday night. But we had little small bits of news, or I want to see how you guys made out with the distinction on Wednesday. Coach Nick Saban on the SEC teleconference basically was asked about Kool-Aid McKinstry's punt returning this year. Obviously, when he catches the ball, he's been quite dangerous, but he's opted not to catch the ball a little too many times, at least for my liking, and it seems like for a lot of people's liking. So Charlie Potter on 3 Sports asked about Kool-Aid McKinstry's future playing punt returner, and Coach Nick Saban affirmed Kool-Aid's decision-making, saying, some of the punts on Saturday sailed over his head, are hard to judge. Rugby punters are hard to judge, and affirmed the job that he has done. But not 2 hours later, Isaiah Bond was up at the media room in the Naylor Stone media room and was asked if he had returned punts in high school, and then was asked if he had been working on punt returning here at the Capstone. And Isaiah Bond said, yes, I returned punts in high school. Yes, it's something that I'm still working on here in Tuscaloosa. And you should be seeing me soon. He tagged his answer with that line, which threw Nick Saban's comments into kind of a loop. So I wonder, we'll start with Wyatt Fulton. I wonder what our take is on the punt returning situation. Was Isaiah Bond just kind of espousing general confidence in his ability? Was he basically teasing that he's going to take over punt returning duties through the last four games of the season? Or maybe you should be seeing me soon is just, hey, when Kool-Aid moves on, he's probably going to the NFL draft this spring. I'm going to be next in line to take that role. What did Isaiah Bond mean by you should be seeing me soon? Obviously, it was his first time up in front of the podium. So first time in front of the media, and I'm sure that he's already been spoken to about that line, that little extra tidbit. And it could mean something. It could mean nothing. And I just want to ask the guys, ask the crew, what we make of Isaiah Bond's comments and how it contrasts with Nick Saban's affirmation of Kool-Aid McKinstry.
Yeah, I don't think Isaiah Bond would come out and just directly say something completely contradictory to what Saban was saying. So if Saban says Kool-Aid's still the starting punt returner, then guess what? Kool-Aid's probably still the starting punt returner. The leash might be getting shorter here. Bond might be getting a little bit more reps in practice, gearing up in case that Kool-Aid seems to not be able to track the ball as well as we're hoping he would. But I think the "you should see me soon" comment is more so kind of gearing up for, hey, if something happens to Kool-Aid, I know he was dealing with a little bit of something earlier in the year. If we're in garbage time or something like that, and we decide to pull Kool-Aid, then, I think you could see Bond in that scenario. But I think it's more so just Kool-Aid's leash is probably a little bit shorter than it was to start the year with punt returning. And in the event that something does happen at that position or Kool-Aid does decide to move on, you could see Isaiah Bond in that role pretty quickly.
Chris Walsh, Isaiah Bond has returned 2 career punts, one against MTSU the first week of the year, and one last season against ULM, where literally everybody returned a punt in that game. What do you make of the comments and the contradictory thoughts?
Well, I mean, he's been second on the depth chart, so it's obviously he's and the fact that he's done it a couple times before, he's the next guy up, kind of thing. People forget the number one key to punt returning is actually catching the ball. It's not fumbling. And so it's when I hear people like, oh man, what's up with Kool-Aid? It's like, what, did he fumble? No. Okay. I mean, And it is a harder job than people appreciate. And the other part of that, obviously, is, you know, he's a regular starter at cornerback. That's a little tricky, you know. So it's doing that double duty, I think, sometimes can throw guys a little bit. So let me just kind of get that all out of the way. Yeah, I if Saban says Kool-Aid's our guy, Kool-Aid's a guy, but it's obvious that they're probably going to get this. They're probably going to get Isaiah Bond some works, at least in the next few games. You know, unless he is absolutely positively ready to go and take over the role, you don't switch a guy at the position like that for LSU. You know, you just don't do it. Although the game is home, so that's definitely a benefit. But yeah, I'm sure we're going to see him a little bit more here down the stretch, and they're probably going to start, you know, getting a little more experience. I mean, at minimum, I would assume we're going to see him against Chattanooga, but you know, they've got 3 SEC games to go, and you know, I don't know, some people are already kind of looking past, you know, Kentucky. Kentucky's, you know, you can't do that kind of thing. It's November. This is when everything plays out. So yeah, I think Wyatt's definitely at minimum very close to nailing it there.
Will Miller, will we see you return a punt against Chattanooga? I know you got some college eligibility. What do you make of the situation?
Well, I can definitely say that if the coaching staff were to approach me with that responsibility, my first emotion would be extreme surprise, because up to this point, I'm not aware that I would even be considered. And to Chris's point, punt returning is a very hard job. I did not excel at it at the recess level in days gone by. But
I'm sure they were scouting you, though.
Oh, absolutely. And perhaps that plays a role into why I haven't been considered yet. But my belief is that maybe Isaiah Bond said something he shouldn't have. That's what I'm thinking. Maybe I'm wrong, and I think he might get some reps against Chattanooga, but I'm with Chris. I don't see it going his direction for the LSU game. You can't be tinkering around with games like that, regardless of the environment. I don't see that happening. He might return a punt or two against Chattanooga. Maybe he shifts into it temporarily full time for that game, but I think he probably just maybe tacked something on that he shouldn't have. And if true, then yes, he probably did have that addressed with him with the staff, but that's to be expected. I think that he might well be the guy after Kool-Aid moves on. If the chalk holds and that's the direction that he goes, then Isaiah Bond's probably going to be that guy. That could have been some of the implications of the comment, but regardless, that was my first reaction when I saw it on Twitter. That's not something he probably should have said. True or not, I don't anticipate that being something that was supposed to slip out.
Yeah, it was the only real newsworthy comment in the Wednesday press conference. We heard from Dallas Turner, Justin Aboigbe, and Isaiah Bond, and all three guys were perfectly fine up at the podium. But it was the only real newsworthy comment, and I did kind of feel like, ooh, you probably shouldn't have said that, whether it's true. And really, the word soon, and I tried to kind of make this clear in our piece for BamaCentral.com. The word soon is such a relative term. Soon could be tomorrow. Soon could be a year from now. Soon could be 3 months from now. Soon is so different to so many different people. I think a lot of people ran with that comment saying he is the new punt returner, and I don't think that is completely accurate or fair to say. So it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting to see. I'm with Chris that the first responsibility is catching the dadgum football from the punt returner spot. And yeah, Kool-Aid, look, really has shied away from that. The Arkansas matchup really didn't catch any of the punts except for the last one. The Tennessee matchup didn't catch any of the punts and let the ball roll. And okay, he loses the ball in the sun or the punt sails on him. All right, that happens. And I'm with you. I was a fair to Midland punt returner in elementary school, not really one to catch it on in recess. When the ball gets up that high, it becomes quite difficult to see, especially with 100,000 people looking at you. I think that makes it even more difficult. But really, Alabama's just got to get somebody who will catch the ball, not let it roll the extra 5, 10, 15, 20 yards down the field. And whether that's going to be Kool-Aid the last 4 weeks of the year or Isaiah Bond, obviously in Nick Saban, everyone trusts. Let's keep it rolling. I mean, I want to talk about Tommy Rees, as I think that he has been unfairly vilified this season. I want to talk about Will Reichert because my man Austin Hannon wrote a great piece about Will Reichert this morning on BamaCentral.com. I do want to talk about Michigan because the cheating scandal is so juicy to me. Maybe it's not. Some of my friends in my outside of Alabama group chat are saying, Joe, you're making too much of this. It's not that interesting. But to me, it's just fascinating. And then we'll talk about the SEC slate. But before we do that, let's talk about news that happened at the AHSAA level last night. The Huffman Vikings finished their season 0-10. We cover AHSAA just a little bit on BamaCentral.com. The Huffman Vikings finished their season 0-10, and we've seen 0 for seasons before. Will Miller and I have seen the Holy Spirit, Holy Spirit right here in Tuscaloosa have winless seasons, and Holt as well, the Ironmen. Unfortunate for those, and obviously, if I pull for every high schooler, I know they're working hard.
I would like to point out, Joe, that Holy Spirit has 2 consecutive wins over Brilliant High School.
Yes, they do. And Holy Spirit is not in this record book. The Huffman Vikings finished their year 0-10 and did not score a single point. The first time since 1965 anyone in the AHSAA has gone an entire season without scoring a single point. And so the debate in my outside of Alabama group chat, we have 10 guys, and we have had different 10th guys before. So I asked, hey, if we bring in one of the old guys to make 11, could we score a single point? Could we manufacture a touchdown on the Huffman schedule, whether it be a defensive touchdown, an offensive touchdown, a safety, any kind of points? How crazy, Chris Walsh? How crazy is this? We've been covering AHSAA football for quite some time now. How crazy is it to not score a single point? Now, their schedule was really tough. Obviously, they are in 6A. They're in the same region as Clay Chalkville, the Jalen Mbakwe fame, and Clay Chalkville beat Thompson. So they're obviously one of the better teams in the state. But they scheduled Hewitt-Trussville for their non-region games. They scheduled Sparkman. They scheduled Minor. They've scheduled tough. They scheduled Parker as well, Jeremiah Beeman School, Alabama commit. They scheduled really tough non-conference games, but they weren't able to score a single point this year.
I'm supposed to comment on that?
What do you like? Is it not crazy to you?
It's sad. I feel for the kids. I mean, it's just that's tough. And look, I don't know any of the specifics there. I don't know. It's funny because I've been working on a piece for our sister site. I guess I should call it now, Mizzou Central, which we have taken over. And I've been working on a piece about how basketball in general has risen so much in the SEC, and it's, and you talk to these coaches, it's like, why is the SEC so tough in basketball? And they're like, it starts with a commitment, that was made by the league and by the schools to get better, and we're seeing now. I mean, Alabama was the number 1 seed in the tournament last year. You're looking at all these guys who are getting drafted and so forth, and the conference has come such a long way. And so, I mean, it's you got to start with the administration, and you got to start with the school itself. And like I said, it's just sad, and I feel for the kids. And I wish maybe even a safety. Just give a safety.
Something. I was at a game last week, Will Miller, where the quarterback threw a very bad pick six. It was a miscommunication with the wide receiver. Threw it right to a defensive back. The defensive back, all he had to do was catch it and essentially walk the 15 yards into the end zone. And you'd think at the high school level, there'd be some kind of fortune, some kind of just a little bit of luck for the Huffman Vikings to get into the end zone.
Well, for me, the whole situation just kind of reeks of the things that happen when a game get out of hand. And basically what happens there, obviously we've all seen, thousands upon thousands of hours of football at this point in our respective lives, is that the team that's losing naturally tends to play a little bit listless. And when you get that, you get those unforced errors, you get those mistakes, and they're multiplied. And when you're already starting from maybe not as high of a level of talent as the 11 standing across from you, that's only going to get magnified. So that's what I think most of this probably is, but that doesn't diminish from just the sheer unfortunate nature of it. I mean, how demoralizing that's got to be to even put on pads when it's 9 games into the year and you haven't scored a single point. I mean, mentally, what's that going to do? You're beat before you're even getting to your sideline on Friday nights. And it would suck the fun out of playing if I were on that team. And I would imagine that's the same for a lot of people. I would take no joy in the game of football if that was the situation that my team found itself in. So it is just sad. That's the prevailing sentiment here.
Wyatt Fulton from South Alabama area, Mobile, Saraland, those kinds of times. High school football is huge down there. This is a 6A school. They can't find a 4A, a 3A, a 2A school to get one win off of. To Chris's point, the administration not committing to, helping the guys get a little bit of confidence. What in the world?
It's definitely tough. And I covered, when I was working in Mobile, I covered 3 teams for 2 years. It was, I think over those 2 years, one team won 2 games, one team won no games, and then one team won the 6A title. So it was like I got both extreme ends of the spectrum.
Was it Spanish Fort?
It was not. No, Saraland won that title. And then I won't name the winless teams. Just it was bad. It was bad. But no,
they only scored a time or two.
They did score a time or two, and a couple of them were closer games. A good solid 3-0 matchup there. Good defensive football, as I like to call it. And it's just demoralizing. You see it. I mean, you see it in the crowd. You see it in the players. You just see it. You see it in the media. Like, I get to the press box and nobody looks happy to be there. Like, high school football is already a grind, and nobody's just happy to be there when it's a winless team. You get a winless, 4A school against some 7A in the region who just needed a tune-up game, and it's bad. It gets ugly quick.
Well, I just want to know if Hewitt-Trussville paid Huffman to show up on their homecoming night. I'm hopeful that Huffman got something out of the year. The best thing for them is they are off next week. They scheduled their off week on the last week of the year, so they got they got to end their season a week early. Just a wild thing. First team shutout in the AHSAA since 1965 for the entire year.
Was the defense at least good?
At what point do you start scheming just to score a point?
Right. At
what point are your practices and game plans centered around getting one single touchdown as opposed to winning an actual, their 12-minute quarters, so an actual 48-minute game?
That's what's so fascinating to me is, like, even some of the poorer teams that I've seen in West Alabama have gotten on the scoreboard. Like, whether it be a late touchdown when the backups are in, they've found a way to score a touchdown here or there. You get a bad snap, you get a scoop and score. Like, some sort of fortune has to happen for you at some point to score. So that's what kind of blew my mind. I know Chris maybe wasn't as interested in the subject, but it's just like, seems over 10 games, somebody's got to get into the end zone.
We're a lot more recent in high school football coverage than Chris is. Chris has been one of the big dogs for a minute now.
Well, let's talk about Michigan. I've talked about it a couple times this week on the show. And finally, we'll get some opposing or maybe affirming viewpoints. Michigan is under fire. Michigan football, Connor Stallion, is in trouble, suspended with pay. Michigan, the NCAA is on campus. The FBI is on campus for a different matter. But you've got a lot of eyes on the Michigan Wolverines for their sign-stealing scandal. The TCU Horned Frogs were warned of the sign-stealing scandal, and apparently Sonny Dykes played some tricks by doing some dummy signs. I don't know what it would take, but I'd be about three missed signs into a semifinal game before I fired Connor Stallions off the sideline and just tried to coach my own team. But goodness gracious, what's going to happen with the Michigan Wolverines? They're off this weekend, so they get a week to kind of figure out what they want to do. 2 weeks from now, they're playing at Penn State. Then they play the big game about 2 weeks after that with Ohio State. National title contender Aiden Hutchinson last night calling it a witch hunt and saying, "Oh, once we're champions again." When were you champions, Aiden Hutchinson? Once we're champions again, everybody will forget about this. What's going on with Michigan? I'm turning to Chris Walsh because he's the expert. You've seen everything here in college football more than I have. What in the world? Like, I'm so fascinated by this story because I don't know anything like it. Obviously, sign stealing has been a thing in games. Coach Saban talked about it this week on two different programs. Talked about it on Pat McAfee and on the SEC teleconference. Talking about how it was a thing in the NFL, and then talking about the helmet signal, the helmet microphones is going to be a way to eliminate sign stealing. What do you are you as fascinated by this story as I am? Do you think that anything's going to become of it for the Michigan Wolverines? Will you see the whole staff bolt and break apart? Will Jim Harbaugh be back in the NFL next season? What do you whole make of it? How do you wrap your arms around this story?
Sports Illustrated had a really good article by Richard Johnson this week, which I don't know how the heck they found this guy, but apparently I think it was a student that Stallions was texting with, and was saying he's really tight with the whole staff, basically lays everything out, and said that he envisions someday leading Michigan and was preparing this huge document called the Michigan Manifesto. And it's just like, wow. And look, I've run into guys like this every once in a while in college football. They scare the daylights out of me, and they should scare the daylights out of every single coach. But, there are these guys out there, who will do this kind of stuff and do anything that a head coach will ask or not ask them to do, kind of thing. And, stick their necks out on the line. And, I think Michigan's in a lot of trouble. And look, the NCAA is toothless right now, and they're still going to take a chomp out of Michigan. They have to, especially after the embarrassment of not doing anything to North Carolina a few years ago. That was horrible. And it's in an ideal world, they're going to have enough where they can do something this year. The longer this drags out and the more that they get away from, the players and the coaches who are actually involved in this, that's where people have a complaint. But the thing is it's, you have to have the proof, and that takes time to get, and you have to do the interviews, and you have to do the diligent work that goes into that. So this is a huge scandal. And right at a time where, it's not just this season, we're going through expansion. We're going to, college football playoff, and Michigan is now getting black eye doesn't even begin to cover it. If they have the proof on this, and it looks like they do, Michigan needs to be banned from the postseason right now. Boom, gone. Can't be considered for the national championship. The coaches, entire staff, they all need to be fired. They all need to be, have the designation of show cause applied to them, and so forth. It's Reader just pointed out the Astros. Tyler White just pointed out, does nobody learn from the Astros? The Astros went through a lot. And granted, it's they probably should have been penalized even more, but it's the organization as a whole reacted well and was okay. We screwed up. We're gonna try to do this as best we can. And they brought in a really good manager, Dusty Baker, who is I've dealt with Dusty before. He's great, and I'm sure he's not watching, but I want to wish him a very happy retirement.
Amen.
And he's earned it. He's one of the good guys in baseball. They need to throw the book at Michigan, period. And that, and then they need to do even more than that.
Well, I've had a lot of people, my aunts at my group chat basically saying, Joe, you're only after this because it'll help Alabama get into the playoff. And I'm saying, no, this is wrong. This is inherently wrong.
This is integrity of the sport.
Yeah. This might make me a little gray area, but I'm pro sign stealing if you can figure it out on the sidelines, if you can figure it out from the press box. But
that's gamesmanship. That's a different matter altogether.
Exactly. But it's buying tickets, recording sidelines, and basically deciphering. One, Connor Stallions, you're a genius, and you've wasted your genius basically by being nefarious. But so I'm pro sign stealing when done legally. But this is just absolutely absurd to me to send these staffers to the back-to-back SEC championship games, to send staffers to Oregon, Washington last year, to send staffers to Tennessee, Kentucky last year. What do you make of it? And secondarily, I'll throw it at you. Do you believe what some of these blog sites are saying, that the Michigan staff helped South Carolina defeat Tennessee and defeat Clemson by giving up some of their secrets?
Well, first off, if Dusty Baker is watching the show, we want to thank him for that. And secondly, as to your last question,
we want to invite him to be on the show.
Yeah,
right?
That's every day.
Chris, yes. I don't believe the South Carolina stuff whatsoever, because that's just patently ridiculous. If true, that adds a whole nother wrinkle to this that will be explored in the future if it does come out that that's actually a thing. I don't think so. I don't even think it's a possibility, but just throwing that out there. I'm reminded of the Astros, and I'm reminded of the Nationals when they made the World Series now 4 years ago. Feels like yesterday. And by this point, it was an open secret that the Astros had deciphered gotten means to decipher people's signs, and it was known around the league. So other players are texting Nationals players and saying they're stealing signs, and so the Nationals switched up their signs and beat the Astros in 7 games. So I'm willing to bet that some people in some circles around the sport maybe had an inkling that something was going on before these bombshells have dropped. With that, I think it's only going to add to the punishment, because that would imply that it's been going on for longer than you or I realize, which is more often than not the case. I mean, the Astros have been cheating since 2017, and they cheated. I don't know if they were still cheating in 2019. The investigation had revealed that they quit in the 2018 regular season. I don't know. But if Michigan has been doing this, I would like to say that it would not shock me if Jim Harbaugh knew nothing about this. Jim Harbaugh does have a bit of a reputation for sometimes things fly over his head. I would not be shocked if he knew nothing about this, but I wouldn't be shocked if he did. Either way, I think he's going to bolt for the NFL and avoid serious punishment. That's been the chatter in my circles. Jim's been an NFL candidate for the past couple of off seasons. I believe he's interviewed for jobs. Don't quote me on that. He was heavily in for the Vikings job prior to that was last offseason. Yeah. And I think the Colts were interested in him at some recent juncture, but I think he's finally going to take that leap. Obviously, his staff's not going to come with him, so they're probably going to take the brunt of this. I think that the institution will probably be punished. Jim Harbaugh himself, not as much, if at all.
Wyatt Fulton, am I just overreacting because I live in the college football world? Is this a huge deal? Or like, could all my friends are saying, Joe, this is nothing. This is nothing. And I'm like, how can you not see that this messes with really? I mean, think about it. You're Ohio State. You've been beating the brakes off of Michigan for 7 years in a row. And then all of a sudden you get 2 20-point losses in a row. And it comes to find out your signs have been stolen. Everything's been like, if this were Alabama and Auburn, if this were Alabama and Tennessee, this would be the Alabama fan base would burn the other campus to the ground. So like, this just doesn't seem like, okay, I'm good with strategizing. I'm good with stealing signals if you can find it. Yesterday on Pat McAfee, Coach Saban said when he was in NFL circles, they were allowed to send scouts out to other games, and they did steal signals, and basically said, I didn't want to hear the signals because it just messed me up. Is this a big deal or not?
I definitely think it is a big deal. I mean, you mentioned it, you're getting the brakes beat off you 7 years in a row by a team like Ohio State. You struggle with your in-state rival every other year, and then just completely out of left field in 20, I believe, I can't remember who wrote it, but I saw that this started around 2021.
21 and 22, yes.
Yep, 21 and 22, and a little bit into this season before they ended up getting caught. Out of left field, you just start beating the brakes off everybody and making the college football playoff as an undefeated team.
They jumped their winning percentage up from like 66, 67% to like 93, 94%.
Right. So there was very clearly something that happened in the 20 to 21 off season, or just the 21 season. And now it's come out that this is Stallions. At this point, I'm with Chris. Like, you banned them from the postseason this year. You raked Michigan over the coals. It's absolutely wild to see a program do this. because Michigan's a top 3 program brand in college football history as a whole. You've got Notre Dame, Michigan, Alabama, those are like your top tier echelon of programs in college football history ever as a whole. So for Michigan to come out and be caught doing something like this, completely unprecedented. I think I would give every coach a show cause. Every player gets the chance to transfer out without sitting out a year. And anybody who's left that doesn't leave for the NFL or leave coaching altogether just gets absolutely raked over the coals.
Well, you just hit it right there, and Chris, you go right ahead. But you just hit it. Like, you're already operating on a great recruiting budget. You can bring in 4-star, 5-star, pretty much whoever you want to. And then, so you're playing Indiana, you're playing Northwestern, you're playing Illinois, who are not playing with the same caliber of player you are. And then you want to basically bleep over the coaches. You want to basically go over the top of your strategizing. It just makes it like, okay, we're already not playing the same game on the recruiting field. Why are we like we're now not playing the same game between the white lines?
And here's the leverage I think the NCAA needs to use. And I would not normally recommend that they do this, but I mean, if Michigan fights them on this, and I'm sure they are initially because the people are involved. If I'm the NCAA, I have to say, okay, here's the deal. Here are your choices. Either you accept A, B, C, D, and E, or we're going to let the FBI prosecute you all. Because this is blatantly illegal. It's absolutely, I mean, these people would be going to jail. And it's just like, okay, here's your choice. There you go. What do you want? And if they even hesitate, I call the FBI and say, go get them.
That's another thing. Sorry to interrupt you there, Joe. That's another thing is, like, this isn't just completely out of left field that happened with Michigan. Like, they were already in trouble for 2 other scandals, 2 other issues. Harbaugh was suspended to start the year for recruiting violations. So you're in the middle of 2 other scandals, 2 other investigations, and then this sign stealing bomb drops. At this point, you've got 3 ongoing investigations. You've got NCAA and private investigators and the FBI crossing each other in the hallway talking about what evidence are you finding. Like, this is just insane.
I know it doesn't apply here, but this is the kind of, if it did apply, this is the kind of give Heisman back territory that, famously Reggie Bush had to do, and I'll reserve opinion or comment on that particular subject at this exact second. But this is that kind of territory. Like, you're talking about stripping this program down to the bare bones of just punishment, of punitive action, and it's so unprecedented. When the Astros did this, there weren't even bylaws in the league constitution that allowed the league office to throw the book at them because it was just so wild of what they did. This is almost even crazier because you're talking about a whole web, a whole network. You're talking about this guy brazenly buying tickets in his own name, but also forwarding those tickets to a bunch of people all over everywhere, deputizing those people to go out and partake in this operation. This is almost crazier. This is a web. This isn't just a trash can and a monitor and a dugout at your home ball field. This is a national operation.
That's what's got me so stirred up about it, and this would be our 3rd day mentioning it on the program, talking about like the new every development that comes out. So we'll table this for today, and we'll continue to talk about it because it's not going to go away anytime soon. Especially next Tuesday, the college football playoff poll. The initial poll comes out at 7 p.m. We'll have it right there on BamaCentral.com. Let's talk about something else that hit on BamaCentral.com before we go into the weekend slate of games. Our man Austin Hannon wrote about Will Riker. The all-time SEC all-time leader in points, 496 points scored. He's in his 5th year, came back for his COVID year, didn't go to the NFL. Coach Saban has been pretty vocal about praising Will Riker and praising the COVID year, praising NIL for allowing Will Riker to come back, not forcing him to go to an NFL roster and thus get cut, as probably he may have done due to leg strength issues. His accuracy has been off the chart, but the NFL kickers, their leg strength is. Absurd. So we'll start with Wyatt Fulton this time, and I just want you to put into words what Will Reichert has meant to you. And we want to encourage all our listeners and viewers to go to BamaCentral.com and check out Austin Hannon's breakdown by the numbers, Will Reichert's records here at the University of Alabama.
It's absolutely huge. I mean, I remember watching Alabama throughout kind of the start of this Saban dynasty and things like that. And even, 2013, it's, you see guys line up for kicks and it's like, okay, it's going to be short. It's going to be wide. I think at one point, one national championship run, we literally had two different kickers, one for short yardage and one for long yardage situations, just because they couldn't hit the other one. Papanastis lines up against Georgia in the national championship. Not a soul thought that ball was going through the uprights. Everybody thought something was going to go wrong, and of course it did. With Will Reichert, it is the first time, and I've heard Alabama fans say this, it is the first time that Alabama fans have seen us line up for a kick and not immediately think, oh crap, what's going to happen? Yeah, it's like cover your eyes, watch through your fingers. First time they're not immediately thinking, oh crap, how's this going to go wrong?
Chris Walsh, you've seen a lot of kickers here at the Capstone. How amazing has Will Reichert been? I mean, he went an entire season one year without missing. Obviously, last year, big miss against the University of Tennessee, but he hasn't missed since then. Just the consistency of the Hoover product.
Yeah, and the year that he was perfect and didn't win the Lou Groza Award,
a crime,
which is one of the very few awards that no one from Alabama has ever won at this point. It's like that, the Mackey, the Ray guy.
J.K. Scott should have won that one in 2014.
Yep.
I hear from people, it's like, well, if he doesn't miss a kick, he's going to win the Lou Groza Award. It's like, no, that's already happened. But the thing is, that award is, I think it's definitely geared upperclassmen, and this is kind of worked to his advantage because he's a senior this year. So he's 15 for 15. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm looking at it right now. 4 other kickers in college football who haven't missed a field goal yet, but he's had the most attempts. Ryan Fitzgerald from Florida State is really good. The guy from Miami is really good, but he's missed one. But the thing is, they're not seniors, and he's a senior, so he's got a really good chance to win that award this year. I think the only reason why he didn't win it a couple years ago was because there was a guy who was older who went and missed, and they were like, we're going to give it to him kind of thing. So we might be seeing history here. I think very good chance.
Will Miller, quick comments on Will Reichert.
I think that what Wyatt said was pretty accurate. It's been very, kicker's been the one inconsistent position kind of the Saban era. And we just ran through awards. Obviously J.K. Scott got hosed in 2014 and should have won the Ray Guy that year. Will Reichert did not win a few years ago, I think, because he was an underclassman. I agree with Chris. I think he could win it this year. It's entirely possible, but he would be well served to keep that perfect mark. But either way, I mean, he's got to be the best kicker of the Saban era, right? I mean, look, Cade Foster was better than he ever got credit for, but I mean, if that's your number two, no,
Lee Tipton's number two.
Foster, there's a large gap, and you had Jeremy Shelley was perfect in 2012, but obviously that wasn't knocking any doors off their hinges because he was the short yardage kicker. He never tried a 53-yard field goal, a 50-yard field goal. Adam Griffith picked himself up before the end of his tenure, but throughout, largely forgettable. Andy Papanostos, that one's well documented as why it ran over. So Will Reichert, to me, has been the model of consistency at one of the only positions in the Saban era that really hasn't been. And for that alone, his impact is absolutely vast.
Tiffin was named an All-American by one I think it was just one organization. He wasn't not a consensus choice. But a quick trivia question for you guys. Can you name the one position Alabama's never had an All-American?
Tight end?
It's tight end. That's right. Excuse me. I should have said during the Saban years. I apologize. I screwed up the question.
No, that's all right.
But yeah, it's funny because it's you would think, I mean, OJ Howard could have had a chance, but they never got him the ball. So it's like
criminally underused.
I want to ask Nick someday, kind of half joke with this, like, what's wrong with your team? Why can't you have an All-American tight end? But oh well.
All right, before we get to the picks, we'll hit the last topic right here. Tommy Rees. I want to talk about Tommy Rees' development, and I want to talk about really what he did this past week against Tennessee. A lot of motions, a lot of movements, a lot of eye candy, especially in the second half. I think Tommy Rees has been unfairly vilified throughout the season. Now, obviously, you have the Texas game that it didn't go well, and you have the USF game that didn't go well. You didn't score a whole lot of points against Ole Miss or against Arkansas, but some of that's on the offensive line, and some of that's just on execution as well. So Tommy Rees, I think he has, I'll give him a good B+ for the year, and especially I think he's been getting better throughout the year, learning his personnel and really scheming for his personnel. You saw really the first two plays against Tennessee in the second half, Coach Saban said were dialed up, said were basically pre-planned plays. If you go back and watch us on the 27 things I noticed against Tennessee, you can see right there the first drive, Tommy Rees basically dials up what looks like an RPO, but it's an automatic give, and the pass routes take the linebackers out of the hole, and James McClellan rips off a 46-yarder. Then the second play, he rips off the 46-yarder to Isaiah Bond, using Jermaine Burton to basically distract the entire secondary and breaks open Isaiah Bond. I think that really Tommy Rees has gotten unfairly vilified because it's easy to turn and hate on coordinators. You can all remember Bill O'Brien and Pete Golding over the last couple of years being the brunt of complaints. Chris Walsh, how do you think that Tommy Rees has done in his first year as Alabama offensive coordinator, given the fact that you're changing offensive linemen, you're putting some freshmen at left tackle, and given the fact that it took Coach Saban all summer long and all fall camp long and 3 games into the season to name a starting quarterback?
Yeah, you can also, there are a number of different factors that you can point to. I mean, I still don't understand why they had so many problems snapping the ball, but then you turn around and say, well, why can't they put the quarterback under center when they get near the goal line? Look, it's a long year, it's a long season. There's a feeling out process. Everyone has to figure everyone out, and I'm sure getting adjusted to working for Saban is probably as challenging as anything in coaching in college football. But you're seeing the results now, especially the quarterback, between the quarterback and the coordinator, they're kind of figuring out what works, what everyone's comfortable with. You're beginning to see Jermaine Burton step up a little bit more. You're seeing the roles beginning to solidify. It's a long process, and it doesn't just happen overnight. So, I know fans are impatient and they want immediate results, and it's like, oh my, the coordinator cost them the game. How do you know that? Come on. How do you know that? Because you don't know the play call, you don't know what the preparation went into it. It's an oversimplification. Now, look, I mean, there are certain times, and granted, I'm as guilty about this as anyone when I'm watching a team and I'm just like, what are they thinking? How do they come up with this? And those are fair questions and all, but Nick Saban's the head coach of Alabama. I mean, this guy knows football better than anybody, and maybe everybody. If Saban says he's happy with him, for the most part, I'm going to sit there and say, okay, there's probably a bunch of things that we don't know about, and give him the benefit of the doubt. But so that's kind of a cheesy way of saying I'm going to reserve judgment until the season's over. I want to see how this plays out. But this team's getting better. The offense is getting better. And, we didn't see the penalties that we've been seeing lately. And they got to get the sacks down still. But they're facing SEC teams. These are the best of the best. So you've got opponents that are spending the whole year figuring out how to mess you up. They're going to find stuff sooner or later. Yeah. But I love the way that the team reacted against Tennessee in the second half. The offense obviously played much better, and they won that game. Let's see what they do against LSU.
Will Miller, I think you might be on the other side of the coin with Tommy Rees. Tell us about what you think.
I think he's adjusting over the past few weeks a lot better than some people might have thought. I think a lot of people saw the South Florida game, as well as myself. I was in Tampa, and were not encouraged. But he's acclimated well. I think part of that is there's a learning curve in any new coaching position that really isn't addressed until the actual games start being played. And I think that's what we're seeing as we're watching this team week in and week out. I think that's part of the adjustment that's been made, is that you're learning, not necessarily learning on the fly, but that experience, that practical experience, is helping inform what Tommy Rees is doing week to week. So I think that he has improved substantially from where he was week one. And if that continues, who's to say that it can't? I mean, Jalen Milroe's getting better. The offensive line has strung together a couple of good performances. Like Chris said, the snapping has still been a recurring problem, which I'm as confused by as the next person. But I guess in this situation, if you're Alabama, you kind of can count your pluses rather than your minuses. You're heading into this LSU game in the driver's seat in the West, especially with a victory, and still in good shape despite that loss to Texas.
Wyatt Fulton, grade Tommy Rees's performance through 8 games.
If I have to give a grade, I kind of would stick with a solid B. Like Will said, there's a definite learning curve there that, you can call a great game at 8A. You can call a great, couple fall scrimmages, and then you line up on an actual Saturday, pads are live, bullets are flying, and things don't work out the way you expect them to. All of a sudden your quarterback's wearing the same color jersey as everybody else, and it's, he all of a sudden is able to get hit. He's able to take shots and things like that, or somebody, plays a little bit faster than you were in practice. And so it's a learning curve. Tommy Rees is an extremely young offensive coordinator. I really liked the hire. I was much higher on him initially than a lot of people were. But, I give him a solid B. I think the team is progressing very well. Saban has said that he really enjoys coaching this team. And I really think this team is a team that is forcing them to kind of coach up again. They're not necessarily like a 2016 type team where it's like, all right, we're just going to throw our jersey on the field and just go out there and we'll win by 20. You're having to actually coach. You're having to actually play the game. And it's they're having fun with it.
All right, we've had a lot of fun right here on the Joe Gaither Show on Bama Central and BamaCentral.com. We're here with Wyatt Fulton, Will Miller, and Chris Walsh right here on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. You listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on Amazon. We'll transition now to the business end of Football Friday. We have 5 SEC games and 1 outside the league game to decipher. We'll go Wyatt, Will, Chris, then Chris, Will, Wyatt, all the way around the circle. Say that 5 times fast. We'll start, of course. Look, it's kind of an ugly slate. I only see 2 games on the SEC slate that I'm really interested in, but we'll just take them in order. South Carolina goes to Texas A&M. Wyatt, you're up first. Aggies are a 16-point favorite. Give us your winner and why, quickly.
Beamer ball is not going to get it done this week. Texas A&M at home is going to be good, and I probably would take them to cover here as well. I think it's a 16-point line.
I agree with Wyatt on the winner, but not the spread. A&M will win, but not cover. I think that in a vacuum, this A&M team has shown, especially on home field, that they can be very efficient. I think that against an inconsistent South Carolina team that has not performed up to expectations, that's going to be enough this weekend.
Actually, you can say both teams haven't really met expectations. I think Beamer's hot seat is getting hotter by the moment. I'm definitely going A&M.
I'm going A&M as well. I think that I'm not impressed with Shane Beamer's leadership ability. Number 1, Georgia against Florida, the world's largest outdoor, they don't want you to say cocktail, party. Georgia, 14.5-point favorites. No Brock Bowers. Chris Walsh, how you feel?
Georgia, big.
Will, be ready. Be ready.
I'm thinking Georgia will win the game, but we have seen in the past a Georgia team that is much better than the Florida team has played down severely. I'm reminded of 2014 when Georgia had taken the license to pencil themselves in for the SEC East Championship and promptly got trounced by a Florida team that went 6-6 and I believe played East Carolina in the Birmingham Bowl. So you really never know with this rivalry. But in this case, even without Brock Bowers, I'm pretty certain Georgia's going to win.
I've got Georgia winning. Florida smells blood in the water. Billy Napier's got a really good record against the spread the past couple of years. I'm not entirely sure what it is just off the top of my head, but I think Georgia's just able to lean on them with that run game. I'm going to take Georgia, but I will take Florida to cover.
I'm going with Chris Walsh. Georgia, big. Florida stinks away from the swamp. They're okay in the swamp, but outside they're not that. They're going to get run over. And Georgia's going to want to show that Brock Bowers' injury is just a blip on their future schedule. All right, crud. Oh, awful game. Mississippi State is at Auburn. If you don't want to watch Georgia at 2:30, they're going to be on the SEC Network at 2:30. Auburn a 6.5-point favorite. Wyatt Fulton. Will Hugh Freeze get his first SEC win?
Hugh Freeze is going to get his first SEC win. Mississippi State is just frankly not good. Neither is Auburn, but Jordan-Hare's the difference.
I agree with Wyatt, but I think Auburn's going to win by a decent margin. I think Auburn is going to cover the spread here. Definitive first SEC win for Hugh Freeze. I think for Mississippi State, there's not a lot of direction right now. Some of that due to the obvious circumstances that they can't control, but it's kind of reflected in the way this season has gone, and I don't foresee that those fortunes getting any better this weekend.
Yeah, I see a fading team in Mississippi State. I think Auburn's going to win.
I'm with all of us. I'm with Will Miller that Auburn will cover and get a big emphatic win. 6 o'clock, Tennessee, the team that Alabama just defeated. Number 21, Tennessee is at Kentucky. Tennessee, a 3.5-point favorite. Chris Walsh, do the Vols bounce back?
I think the Vols bounce back, but the problem is so is Kentucky. I think Kentucky is got something to prove. This is always a game that the Wildcats always seem to play well in. I like Tennessee to win. I would, if I was a betting person, this is a game I would stay away from, though.
I think that Chris hit the nail on the head with Kentucky usually plays up to Tennessee. I remember that Kentucky beat that much hyped 2016 Tennessee team, but Tennessee gave Kentucky one back in 2018 when they beat, or did Kentucky beat Tennessee in 2016? I seem to remember that. But a game that Kentucky does show well in, I think that Devin Leary might really show us something in this game. And Tennessee's vulnerable. They have a lot of questions from the third Saturday in October. Just had an abysmal second half. No way around it. You can talk about how well Alabama played all the live long, and sure, that's
the officials, Will, the officials.
But Tennessee also played rather badly, and there are going to be a lot of unknowns in terms of how to shore that up. Kentucky's a good team. They laid a couple of eggs themselves, but I think they're going to bounce back. Give me Kentucky to win the game. Why not?
Go Cats. Wyatt Fulton.
I'm going to take Tennessee. Tennessee's going to rebound big here. I think, Josh Heupel's a really, really good offensive mind. That defensive line for Tennessee is really, really good. Tennessee's also got a really good rushing attack. Georgia absolutely killed Kentucky running the ball. I think Tennessee's going to win pretty big there.
I'm with Wyatt Fulton. I think Tennessee bounces back in a big way. Is there any reason to talk about 6:30 Vanderbilt at number 12 Ole Miss? The Rebels 24.5-point favorite. Wyatt Fulton, let's go quick.
Ole Miss is going to win big here. Ole Miss goes to Athens later this year to play Georgia. That is going to be a really big game later on in the year. But right now, Vanderbilt's just going to be a tune-up game for Lane Kiffin and them.
Question's just going to be how good Ole Miss looks. Vanderbilt is very congruent right now with the actual construction happening in their stadium, both in an on-field and facility standpoint. I think Clark Lee's done a fine job there with what he has available, but that's not going to be enough to beat this Ole Miss team this weekend. I don't expect it to be competitive.
Yeah, I like Ole Miss a lot. And just to kind of touch on what Wyatt was mentioning, Georgia has Florida, Missouri, Ole Miss. All three of those games are at home, and then they're at Tennessee. Whenever you see a team face three ranked opponents in a row, and okay, look, Florida is like number 26 right now. That should raise like some warning bells. If Georgia can get through that stretch, they're as good as advertised. But I think Georgia's going to end up stumbling at somewhere during this stretch, and which is going to make the SEC championship game, assuming Alabama makes it, even that much more interesting.
Wow, I'm going with Ole Miss in this game, but Chris, Alabama needs to pull for Georgia to win out. Needs to beat a number 1 Georgia in the SEC championship game, given the landscape of college football.
There's no way that a one-loss SEC team gets held out of the SEC, out of the playoff. I don't care how good the other conferences are. One of them will sneak in, and that's a reminder. And I think you mentioned it before. The first rankings by the committee come out on Tuesday. Alabama is definitely a top 10 team now, and I mean, like you said, this is a really. It doesn't look like a good weekend of games. But this is the kind of weekend where you see some upsets kind of thing. And we're going to start getting into those now as teams start to wear down. You're going to start seeing more upsets.
The last game on my schedule is outside the conference. Number 8, Oregon goes to Utah. Utah coming off a big old win over USC. The winner of this game basically tied for number 2 in the Pac-12. Oregon is a 6.5-point road favorite. I think, Chris, you're up to first this time.
This is a coin flip game to me.
Ducks collide together.
It's in Utah. I really want to pick Utah. I think Oregon's a better team. I'm going to go Oregon.
Cam Rising set out for the year. Utah kind of just has USC and Caleb Williams' number, and that's what I have chalked up this recent result to, because sometimes in sports that happens. Oregon's going to win. Oregon's going to cover.
Utah is a really tough team. They're like a Big Ten team playing in the Pac-12. They punched USC in the mouth. USC had no idea what to do at that point. I think Oregon is also a type of team that likes to do this. Cam Rising will hit it, not play in the rest of this year and things like that. The loser of this game is essentially out of any Pac-12 race, college football playoff race, done for the year. I think Oregon's going to win. Probably would take Utah to cover here.
Oh, I'm with Wyatt as well. Oregon wins, Utah covers. Before we get out of here for the day, we had a lot of fun on our pick segment. We talked a lot about punt returning, Will Reichert, Tommy Reese, Michigan, and more. Wyatt Fulton, tell everybody what you're going to be looking at this weekend with the NFL, Bama on Bama Crime, right before we get out of here.
A lot of Bama on Bama Crime this week. Will Anderson and Bryce Young are going to be facing off for the first time as opponents. Will Anderson said in an interview earlier this week, he's excited to hit Bryce. He's excited for this matchup. So that's going to be, let's hope Carolina doesn't break Bryce too early here. Another matchup that I'm really looking at, going to be New England and Miami again. Matchup in week 2. Miami got the win in Foxborough. Tyreek Hill should be returning. He had a hip injury earlier this week. He said he was just wanting attention. His mom wasn't responding to his calls. He'll play Sunday. And rumor has it Miami should potentially get Jalen Ramsey back. His first appearance as a Dolphin, really helping that secondary. Not going to make Mac Jones' life any easier. I've got the Dolphins big in that one.
Well, you're going to be able to follow Wyatt's coverage, Alabama in the NFL, this weekend on BamaCentral.com. It's a bye week for Alabama, but we will be all over that. Yeah, Chris, what else are we looking at?
Real quick, I just want to mention this. I want to go back. I want to revisit the Tommy Reese thing real quick.
Please.
With one key stat, I think that's going to jump. You're going to hear about it to death next week. Jalen Milroe is second in the conference in passing efficiency. First is Jaden Daniels from LSU. But Daniels is first in the nation. Milroe is 7th. I mean, when people are talking about Tommy Reese and the job he's doing, if I had said at the beginning of the year that Milroe was going to be 7th in the nation, you'd be doing Alabama fans would have been doing cartwheels.
I'd ask what drugs you're on. I would ask what drugs you're on and ask for some myself, because that sounds nuts. I think Reese has done a fine job. I mean, you guys all kind of hit it. Growing into the season, learning your personnel, dealing with a quarterback battle, and trying to figure out what each quarterback does well and then kind of what he can do along the offensive line. I think he's done a fine job, and I'm really looking forward to the stretch run of the season. Tomorrow, I will be over at the Sewell Thomas Stadium. We'll see Alabama and Florida State. You guys can join me if you're not doing anything. Noon, Alabama and Florida State, 2 7-inning doubleheaders. It'll be free admission. Everybody can jump in and see Rob Vaughn's team for the second and final time in fall ball action before spring ball gets going. We'll obviously be paying attention to Georgia, Florida, and then on Sunday we'll we'll be paying attention to Bama in the NFL with Wyatt Fulton on BamaCentral.com. So there's going to be a lot of action. Alabama's not playing this weekend football-wise, but a lot of action to pay attention to. Get out, do something on your honey-do list, do something with the family, pumpkin patch it up or haunted house it up, whatever you guys like to do for the fall festival. This will be your last weekend to do it before Alabama hits its stretch run, and we'll be all over the stretch run right here at BamaCentral.com. 6:45 next weekend, Alabama and LSU inside Bryant-Denny Stadium. We'll have a full crew as always, and we'll be covering it right here on the Joe Gaither Show and all over Bama Central and BamaCentral.com. So for Chris Walsh, Will Miller, Wyatt Fulton, follow them at Writing Walsh, at Real WB Miller, at Fulton W _ myself at Joe Gaither 6. Send us your comments, questions, queries, and complaints. We love the complaints the best. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and on Amazon. Subscribe, rate, and review the program. Share it with a friend, and we'll be back on Monday with another edition of the Joe Gaither Show on Bama Central and BamaCentral.com.